All right, this is good. We are now streaming on YouTube. So there is a bit of a change this time around for this webinar because, all right. So basically, instead of diving directly into the topic today, uh, I would be giving a brief on why are we talking about app distribution, why does it matter now, and how can you participate in this upcoming economy. That is what we're going to be talking about. And of course, to joining me today are Rohit, who's a product manager for Indus App Bazaar, and Abhishek, who has been a technology columnist for better part of the decade, writing for companies like Forbes, Morning Context, and amongst a lot others. He also comes with a background that he used to be part of the Microsoft team for a very long time and has been covering Microsoft very in a very detailed manner for as long as I can remember. So with that background, I think we are ready to start. We have 10 more people, we have 40 more people who should be joining us very soon. As usual, if you have any questions, please drop them out in the chat section on the right hand side. And there are already questions that we got from our listeners and viewers, and these questions are: what are the challenges of OEM app stores, what makes users pick Play Store over an OEM app store? This is one question that we will be answering. And the other question that we will be answering is, are app stores really essential? For a long time the developer ecosystem thrived on Windows with devs owning distribution of apps. Watching, I mean, this is a very complicated question. I hope it is simplified, but basically, what I understand is that, do we really need app stores when you can just sideload everything or something of the sort? But with that said, I think I'm just going to start. And like I said, it's a bit different where I will be giving a bit of a background on why we are talking about the topic at hand. Before we begin, our team has been working really hard on ensuring that we give out the most amount of information that we can. And for that we have launched our blog section, and we will be updating it quite regularly. Some of the things that people told us that you're talking about broad things, we want to know about specific things. So over here you can find the programs that we will be organizing. These are some of the upcoming programs that you can check out with Indus App Bazaar, and a lot of it is to do with small and very relevant queries that people have as to, when I'm spending money for user acquisition, how do I ensure that the fraud isn't happening, or I get the most worth of my this thing. Two very talented Indian Indus members have been hosting them, which is Amaya Thuri and Sahil Modi. And I think Rohit was part of the last webinar that they did on how to get more downloads for your app. Now, coming to why are we talking about app distribution? There is an entire blog that we have written over here that you can check out. I think we will be sharing the links in the chat. But just let me just take you through some of the reports that I have personally been referring to and are relevant for this conversation. So if you look at this, this is Grandview Research. This is the URL over here. So if you see, they estimate the market size to be at, uh, what do you call that? Just hold on. What happened? Just let me just start it again. I'm not very comfortable with Zoom yet. Okay. So it seems odd after the entire year that we have been working via Zoom. But anyways, so the entire market size, global application market size, as per Grandview Research, is at 154 billion. Now, this is not the income that we're talking about from that Apple is dispersing to the developers. This is the entire market size, like how much are people earning through applications. Now it's growing at a rate of 11.5, or it's suggested to grow at 11.5. I went and checked the annual reports of Apple, Xiaomi, and Google, and all of these correspond because they have a section called internet services, all three companies. And over there, you will find that this Grandview research hypothesis is very much in line with what the market share or the income that these companies are deriving from internet services or distribution of applications and content. So, what is the size like? It's 154 billion, and it is just going to grow through the years to come. I mean, and as you can see, there is something called the others. Now, that is the others is what we're going to be discussing in detail today. So the others, though there are no specific options over here, but as we can see, there are other applications that are going to come to the fore. It might be augmented reality, virtual reality, and all of the studies that I've read say have one thing in common, which is that gamers are the big spenders. Gaming is a section that we really need to pay attention to. So when we say that khilono pe dhyan do, when the prime minister says that we should look at toy manufacturing, gaming, digital toys is something that we should really look into because it is going to grow. Now, just to validate what I've just seen, I went to another report by which is by Technovio, which is much more bullish on the growth than what Grandview research was. And they are saying that it might be double. From 2021, we might see a double digit. While Grandview research says that it can be at 10%, Technoview is much more bullish and they are like 20% guaranteed. That is the growth rate that we are seeing for these industries. Now, which are the companies? Alphabet is Google, Amazon is Amazon, Apple, Electronic Arts. Electronic Arts is big. I mean, as a gamer, I can tell you that the favorite game that I play, Apex Legends, is by EA. Any game you say, EA is there. The next is Facebook. Facebook has been a marketplace for a very long time. Microsoft really threw a googly through everyone with their recent announcement to have Windows, Android apps on Windows. And I think, when, I'll talk about this with Abhishek, but 10 years ago when iPad was new and we saw for the first time that the IoT of things can finally be built. And when we saw that, what is the next step? Now we have IoT, what is the next step? And that is unification. And Microsoft has really thrown a googly and really made things interesting. Netflix, as we all know, might get soon into gaming, but they too are a content distribution mechanism. Spotify, we all know, and they have been leading the crusade on how to get fair rights for everyone. Ubisoft is another big gaming company, and Xiaomi, like I said, has been really doing well with their app store. Now, what are the fastest growing this thing? Of course, we have the entirety of Asia, Eurasia, and Australia, North America, and these are the platforms. I mean, they are blocked it, but basically we understand that this is where the growth is going to come from, and this is something that a lot of governments have understood, taken cognizance of. And the main, and there's another research that I have for reference, but I think it's more than enough. I've made my point that this is just going to grow. Like, the App Store income is just going to grow. And this is something that a lot of for public policy bodies, especially the competition commissions across the world, have understood and realized. And to ensure that there is fair play, I mean, this is something that we have spoken about. Google wrote a blog on 28th of September 2020 in which they said that everyone will be treated equally. It might be third party store or additional stores, or whatever we want to call them. But is that possible in reality? We don't know it. But what we do know is that European Commission has an entire 328 pages dedicated to all of the practices of how Google does business. And a lot of the times, I'm just going to show it via simple Google search. Play Store features prominently through the entire thing with 375 mentions. So there is something that European Commission knows, and it's not just limited to European Commission, because this is something that we also see through. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to reduce this. Yeah, I wasn't able to get to my tabs. Okay, this is something that we see even in India, where the CCI has been looking at different ways of reining in Google, and these are documents that we will be sharing. As a matter of fact, if you go back to our blog, and if you see over here, we are given all of the original references that you see over here. And both of these companies, Alphabet and what do you call Alphabet and Apple, have been giving very impassionate defenses as to why the current status quo should not be disturbed. And one of the primary concerns that they have is primary privacy and security. And this is something that EU's Vestager, who is the who's leading the Digital Markets Act, has said that that cannot be a reason to limit competition. And this is something again we see with over here when it comes to the US House of Representatives. They also released a similar statement saying that the economic opportunities digitally are now equaling or are about to be equal to what we see offline, and we need to see fair play everywhere. Here I like to give two examples that when you want to listen to a song digitally, you have Wink Music, you have Spotify, you have Apple, you have Tidal, and you have everything. When you want to buy Asian Paints, you have Ramesh, Paresh, Dinesh, Suresh, everyone selling you the same red paint. So this is something that we need to be cognizant of, that if this is apps do not change, then what changes is the way a person consumes and likes the things to be presented. This is something again, there are a lot of opinions, and one of the opinions that I have been reading is Benedict. And Benedict makes a lot of good points in the three blogs that he has written from April to July. I think these are something that are worth reading. And with that, what I would like to do now is bring in the speakers, which is Rohit and Abhishek, through to the conversation. And yeah, welcome Rohit and Abhishek. I really am glad to have you both over here. Any opening remarks, Rohit?
Sure, sure, Aditya. Thanks for such a detailed representation of the problem that we're discussing and hand. And I think one of the fundamental things that most people do realize is that there is a very big digital market that exists in the world. But I think the scale of it and the kind of volume that it operates in is something a lot of us do not comprehend or think about, right? Because everybody feels that, let's say, travel and music and etc. are big spaces in itself, but everything combined is the internet space that we are actually dealing with, where the entire developer ecosystem is continuously producing applications and distributing to the end consumer. Unfortunately, for the entire developer community, which is operating billion-dollar industries in itself, have just one or two avenues, fundamentally depending on which platform you're using, to reach out to these users, and that's extremely limiting. And even those platforms have their own publishing guidelines, which the developers need to abide by. Even if a particular developer is following the rule of the land, however, they still need to abide by those publishing guidelines. So it's kind of this sort of restraining, and where we need to basically make the entire ecosystem understand is that now we are at a point where disruption is extremely important from a perspective of choice, because the market is simply just too large for just one player to basically be managing all the kinds of preferences, both from the end consumer side, also from the developer ecosystem. Because just one player being able to solve for it makes a very, very slow innovating process. As you correctly pointed out, those three keywords, right, which is innovation, openness, as well as uh, choice. These three things are right now absent from the app store industry. And as you have correctly pointed out, even in the research, we being an app store itself, it's over 100 million users. We've seen the kind of growth in the past few, especially in the past 1.5 years of the onset of the pandemic, and macroeconomics changing in terms of gaming becoming an extremely important industry now, more so than ever, with huge amount of explosion in terms of content consumption, which basically is happening through OTT content, which is a byproduct of things not being available offline, music streaming increasing. So these are the kinds of increasing trends behavior. So as you correctly mentioned, the kind of growth opportunity that is there in the future, which is around 10 to 20, 30%, we are also witnessing that kind of a growth. Where we feel is that in such a high growth environment, which is basically the entire internet industry, just one player will no longer be able to sustain. So definitely the ecosystem needs more distribution avenues, needs more fair distributing avenues, as well as open to innovation is what we need to bring in into the overall ecosystem. Yeah.
I think that's a very good point. And over here, Abhishek, let's spice things up over here. Can you give the listeners a background on what Microsoft has just done and why that matters to the industry? With the introduction of this thing, Android apps on Windows, what are they thinking? What are they doing? And any additions to what I Rohit just mentioned?
See, I'll first add on to what you said, and Rohit kind of took forward. We uh, and I have no disdain towards Google Play Store or iOS App Store. They do a great job at it. I have my issues with it. I watch it in whatever writing I do, but those concerns being taken care of in due course of time. They are good distribution platform. The problem is that we cannot see the entire internet economy, the entire app store economy globally in one homogeneous environment, in just one homogeneous distribution environment, which caters to people across the world, across cultures, across different communities, and see them as one, have one guidelines. And as Rohit said, the publishing guidelines that they have, you in case of a business, and you gave a analogy of a physical business, of a paint seller, and Ramesh, Suresh, and Ganesh selling paint. All they have to do is just respect the laws of the land and do their business, even if that commodity is popular, not popular. It's his headache. As long as he's following the laws of the land, he can well start his own store. If he's okay with it, if his business is thriving, he can move to another city, maybe another country, and start selling paint, as long as he's respecting the laws of the land. That has always been the restriction on businesses. Just follow the laws of the land, as is with any other thing in life. But in case of the app developer economy, distribution restricts you, and we've not seen this kind of restrictions to business in any kind of physical real world business, or even the internet economy, because a browser is available and you can just open a e-commerce store and sell products from there, again with all the laws in place and everything. But with the app economy, we are restricted by distribution problem, and that is a problem, where you consider the entire world as one platter, where the server is just one. In case of iOS, it's not even more than one. There are no OEM stores. It's only Apple which can offer you app, which is a bit restrictive. Now, coming to the Microsoft one, and I don't have any internal tidbits about how this pans out. We in the early previews that we've had, the capability of running Android apps is still not available, so we don't know how it kind of functions technically, and how it functions in its integration with Windows. But otherwise, it's just a great move to have another distribution platform. Now, the only thing is that they're also plugging in Amazon App Store, which is an existing distribution platform. They're not opening up another platform or partnering with somebody like IndusOS or any other third-party OEM. They're using an existing distribution platform, not kind of building their own. Being in Seattle helps them talk to Amazon. They've been partners in a lot of other things, Alexa on Windows as well. So while it's an existing distribution platform, it is refreshing for a platform owner, and a platform owner as big as Windows, across billion devices across the world, to have another channel where app developers can engage with their customers directly. Now, what it does is, while Amazon App Store, like I said, it's an existing app store, but it was restricted to mostly in US and some other countries, and also to only to Amazon devices. Now, which is a very very small set of users as compared to the millions of users that potential users that Windows would offer once it is Android running on Windows. So an app developer on Amazon App Store, if he would have been thinking of selling 5 subscriptions a week, maybe that rises to 50 subscription, and he gets interested in his investments of effort and time onto the Amazon App Store, while I'm sure he'll be doing the same job on Google Play Store. So that uh, increase of avenues, the potential opportunity that Microsoft builds in, and all other platforms should, which is what our discussion is all about. That increase in opportunity increases with distribution opportunities, and by restriction of distribution, we restrict the opportunities for the app developers, and that's a very lucrative economy right now, as you've given numbers right at the start.
I mean, that's where thank you very much, because for me as well, the billion devices, and as a media student, we learned from Professor McLuhan that flow of information is going to be from the West, and how everything will become homogeneous. And we are seeing that, with what Rohit said, that two players just controlling most of the things, it's as homogeneous as it can get. But over here, what we require is a local way of consuming and being able to look at discovery in a refreshing or different point of view, because what might work for India might not work for our neighbors in Nepal or our neighbors in Sri Lanka. Like, their needs, I mean, everyone is at different stages of their life. To expect everyone to be like, Nate, you also use A app, you also use B app, you also use C app. There are no other things. And you have to go in, or this is how we'll show information. I'll give you a very simple example. My watchman's name is Shubham Pandey, and Pandeyji's wife is pregnant, and he bought her a phone. When he bought the phone, he was unable to decipher on the Google Play Store on how to get WhatsApp. But when he opened up another store which was existing on the phone, what he saw was big icons. And then he like, ah, bhaiya mil gaya. And some a feature, and it was a Samsung phone, and it was Galaxy Store, and having something like a one tap install, just figured helped his life immensely. He didn't have to think. He cannot read. The only it's quite cute and hilarious the way he interacts with tech. The only things that he has taught his Google to say or read or understand is his name, Shubham Pandey. So whenever he does anything, he just goes to his WhatsApp, turns on his mic, says Shubham Pandey, inserts his name, and he is ready to get started. But over here, Rohit, as someone who is a product manager on an app or a product which is supposed to look at the various ways or the various user experience, or like we call it now, graphic human interaction design, HID, where you look at how each and different types of people will interact. So can you just take us through some of these, how are you making app awareness and content discovery key to your engagement?
Absolutely. So I think, Aditya, you mentioned a fantastic point about how different users have their different needs, and how you started the discussion that people cannot, everything cannot be a one size fit all strategy, right? Like, for example, even if you enter into a Zara store, if I'm wearing a black shirt right now, and every shirt was available in medium size, it wouldn't fit someone who's probably a small size or an XL size, right? So that's as obvious as it can get. But the problem is that we have just one product globally designed sitting for every app developer also. So it's not just the user problem, which is, let's say, of different sizes. It's also the fabric. It's also a different cost of the fabric. It's also a different nature of, let's say, for example, in a tropical environment, you would want to wear a certain different shirt. But let's say in a colder environment, you would want the fabric to be a little bit different, right? So even from the distribution side, that same problem exists. Like, for example, if there is a game developer, let's say EA Sports, they are trying to attract someone who's an extreme gamer, right? They would want the entire app store experience, the discovery of their games to happen in that way, so that someone who's intuitively understanding information about games, who's probably a more evolved user, consumes that kind of an information, right? These games are not small in size. They are 1 or 2 GBs in nature. And as we are evolving, as phone spaces are evolving, the size of the games are also increasing, right? So it's humongous amount of effort that a developer needs to put in and a user needs to put in to acquire that user, right? So the solution design has to be done both from the developer, what they're creating, and the consumer who wants to basically download the app. The same experience with, let's say, for a utility app, which is, let's say, 5 to 10 MBs, which just cleans on your phone, cannot be the same. So app discovery of different applications, both from a distribution side as well as from the consumption sides, need a tailored approach, right? Then we need to also understand that every smartphone prices range from, let's say, 5,000 rupees in India till a lakh device, right? The needs of the consumers are so different, but on every phone, the solution design of the app store is identical in nature. That cannot be the case, right? This is something which we're trying to solve at IndusOS, where we are not solving for just language as a problem. We are trying to solve for a problem where then there's a user and then there's a developer at this ecosystem center. We're trying to say that, okay, you belong to this XYZ group, you're looking at this XYZ user base. The experience of the store also has to be designed in a way that it makes sense for the user as well as the developer who's trying to distribute it. So we are trying to build solutions, or at least the way we are imagining the ecosystem, let's say 3 to 4 years down the line, is that different users have a different variation of how the app store looks like. They are championing into its own vertical. So let's say Indus App Bazaar may have its own different versions based on what the user is looking at. But it's trying to understand what the consumers want, modify and mold itself in order to basically be able to serve the end consumer. Like, for example, people right now are extremely comfortable ordering uh, expensive electronics through, let's say, Amazon and Flipkart. But let's say if they want to buy beauty products, they would prefer Nike as a platform, right? This is a fundamental core consumer experience that app stores also need to accept and evolve accordingly. That we cannot just present one simple solution which works for one user group or a developer group. We need to understand that there's a huge amount of market. Like India itself has 1 billion users coming in, right? And if we look at just India, the variety and the diversity is huge. Language itself is another complex beast as a problem.
I think you came on a very important point, which is trust. I mean, I'm sorry I'm cutting you off over here, but I would like to take
Yeah,
it to
sure.
Abhishek and bring it back to you. Is that trust is something that, I remember when Flipkart allowed CC to Thani, like, unlike some people on Twitter, we didn't have credit cards say like 5, 6 years ago, like American Express and all really came down at that point of time. But, cash on delivery
Yep.
really changed the game for everyone, saying that you pay, and that's the reason we got comfortable in paying and understanding what e-commerce means
Yep.
for us. So that first interaction changed the game. And I've spoken to Rakesh a lot of times in the last year, and he always says, "Yeah, Aditya, wo warning jo aata hai na, कि, are you sure?" That's something which is detrimental to trust. And I have to agree with him, is because you install it once, and it should not keep telling you, are you sure, because that's not going to help the user experience. That's just going to
Absolutely.
hinder how they view it. Abhishek, over here I'd like to ask you, like, we have seen multiple OSs. Like, I remember when we both competed or were peers as writers, we had uh, ये Nokia Migo करेगा नहीं करेगा, will Migo be a reality, or will Sail OS will actually will it actually start, Palm OS, like, beautiful tablet interface. Then BlackBerry was trying 10,000 other things. Now we are sitting in a world where we only have two mobile OSs. I spoke to a couple, not a couple, like half a dozen junior writers, or juniors of ours, and they're like, "What are you saying? Multiple stores on Android? ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है?" And I'm like, I come from a world where we had multiple OSs. For me, it's not a lot of things, but over here, I would like to ask you is, as a reviewer, do you see yourself using the Play Store? What do you think about their homogeneous approach, is one, and second, do you think that one size fits all is something that can be continued into the next this thing. Do you see the adoption of third party stores? Do you see the adoption of other party stores? From a consumer point of view, what is your take? And
See,
from a developer as well.
to all the young friends who were baffled by the idea, ask them if there was only one mall in their city, and every time they wanted to shop, they would go to the similar mall. Sure, all the malls have the same brands, same showrooms, but you sometimes visit one, sometimes visit another, and then you pick up your choices. Maybe the food court at one place is better, maybe the cinema experience at the other is better. So we make all those choices in the real world as well. I'm not sure why people are restrictive, baffled and restrictive upon themselves. I mean, for brands it is okay; they are capitalist enterprises, but I don't get why users want to be restricted. See, we already touched upon the homogeneity part of it. One size fits all. Then Rohit also raised good points that they're not solving only for the language problem, uh, but the fact that one size doesn't fit all, and we've seen that breaking down in the internet ecosystem anyway. We talked about how everything from the West in technology flowed in technology, but in also other fields, flows to the emerging countries, India being one of them. But we've seen that broken down in the last few years as the internet economy, as the Indian economy, the startups grew in the country. We saw huge publications, YouTube channel with content in regional languages. We saw business services, fintech services, all solving for problems in India and not just taping the West. I mean, you can say that Flipkart just picked up an Amazon model, but they solve for the Indian problems like the cash on delivery you mentioned. Then there are hyper local services. There are things like Zomato which were born in India to solve Indian needs and then went to US and in other countries. So we've seen that these were the problems when computing came about, when technology came about. But in the last 10 years or so, thanks to a thriving economy in the internet space, we've broken down that
Barrier.
barrier and the forced digital colonialism, so to say, where everything was flowing from the West to India and other emerging markets.
Yeah.
But because the distribution is now kind of powered by only two companies, which happen to be US enterprises, we are while we've broken that out for internet in the app stores, in the app distribution, we're still restricted. In the internet and not just in India, we see Amazon is a great store. Even in the US, most people shop on Amazon. A lot of them are Prime subscribers, but there are small, thriving e-commerce stores coming up every day. Zappos came about, was a great shoe store, became very popular. Of course, Amazon bought it later, is a different story. But there's a market for everything. Tinder, Bumble, there are great dating apps, but then Grinder comes about just to solve the problem for a certain community. So
Absolutely.
we need solutions for communities, countries, language speakers, and while the world is a big place, India within itself is a very big place, and we have yet to onboard 500 million people to internet and the app economy. So they are yet to come. We are already very big. So while population is a problem for a lot of other things, in the internet economy, in the app economy, it's just a market ready to be served, and we need to solve for those problems, which also makes it easier for other people. So for somebody like your watchman's wife, it should have been easier already, but because she faced this problem, is a stark reminder that we've not solved for that. So she may have apps that are local. She may be a short video fan, and there would be TikTok clones, so many of them made in India. There would be apps which would serve her Hindi, Marathi, or whatever language she speaks. But we've not solved the distribution problem, and that's a problem we should have solved by now. But because everybody wanted to play around the operating systems first, and they've now created a duopoly of sorts in distribution system as well.
In fact,
China.
sorry, I'm
Yes, yes.
cutting you short.
No,
The
no.
friends that you mentioned having a existential question. In fact, another question you should also ask them is that how comfortable are they consuming app install ads on social media platforms? Because that is where fundamentally their discovery of new applications or offers
Right.
around applications is happening, right? they go to a social media platform for Instagram to watch what their friends are doing, but subconsciously they're being sold as consumer products, right? Because to advertisers, and then they're consuming advertisements of applications that probably they've never heard about, but they liked it and they want to now then install it. So the entire ecosystem has been carefully designed to make App Store or to keep App Store as a utility product, right? It's kind of like the platform you download this application from. It will serve that download or the update, but it is not solving for the actual app discovery. It's basically the other players of the ecosystem who are in some way or the other. Let's say for Google, it's Google Search and everything else, but social media platforms and all other platforms which are a part of the ecosystem who are acting as a pseudo discovery or a pseudo app store discovery experience, which in my opinion is obviously a very very big monetization platform and the right way in which big giants earn revenue. But from an end user's perspective, are you really happy just basically getting ad served and then discovering what you would like to discover in different visual formats, or would you not want to have an app store which is basically allowing you to do that as an experience design on its own?
So, I mean, let me just go back. I mean, I'll come back to what you're saying, but since I shared about Pandeyji, I just wanted to share this because this is how the phone made its way back to UP from Mumbai, and this is the packaging. And I've done unboxing, I've done a lot of things in my life, but for once, I hope never in my life do I need to unbox something like this coming to me because it doesn't seem like this thing, but he spent close to 10 minutes coiling and doing, and I'm like, क्यों कर रहे हो ये? He's like, भैया आप जानते नहीं हो हम कहाँ रहते हैं. I'm like, okay. So, but basically, that was the reality of how he sent the phone back to UP. Now, what Abhishek mentioned is very, very real and very. This thing is because while the West made consolidated models around the telecom companies of selling phones, because that became the main pipeline and the distribution was through the tech companies. India already had liberalized everything. So had China. So if you look at China, there are the app markets over there look very starkly different from what they might look in anywhere in the world. The reason for that is because the liberalization was there, and then Google came in and said, "Ki, bhaiya, can we also become a part of it?" And when they wanted to become a part of the Chinese, app markets, the Chinese government said, "If you work with local players, you can come in." And today, as of 2018-19, they had a market share of 4%, which compared to everywhere else in the world is paltry. And most of the things are being dominated by OEMs. So a Tencent or a Xiaomi get apps, or Oppo's or BBK's entire portfolio companies, they are the ones which are leading. BBK's portfolio companies, if for the this thing is Oppo, Vivo, OnePlus, and Realme, all are BBK. Then so we are seeing slowly that the consolidation is going to the hardware players, and that is something that brings us to a very interesting problem, because the West or the European markets is where we see players like Apple doing a few things with uh, what do you call that, OEMs, partnering up with OEMs. So, but over here we are not seeing that yet. I mean, that's what So over here, Abhishek, a quick question to you: is this like I remember when Google Maps were new, the Play Store was new. Is it just a matter of marketing? Because in the 10 years that I've spent in product and PR and marketing, what I've realized is the more you spend on marketing, the more you can capture the public's mindset. Is it just this thing कि marketing में और थोड़ा पैसा लगाओ and the users will come to you? Is it something, will that solve for things, or is it something that is too, what do you say, will consumers come if we market the products in the manner that we have been speaking about? Is it just a factor of marketing so to make people aware?
In terms of for third party app stores, is that what you're
Yes.
asking?
Yes.
No, so marketing would have helped, but uh, before marketing there has to be trust and awareness in terms for consumers on the consumer side. uh, I understand. I was talking to somebody about third party app stores and the OEM stores, and one question came about which I didn't have an answer for. He said, "I buy a phone and I buy a subscription on a third party app store, maybe a Galaxy store on a Samsung phone, but tomorrow if I change a phone, I don't know if I can get the same App Store subscription on another one." And I understand the reason he chooses Play Store, even though he likes the Galaxy Store on his Samsung, is because he knows that his subscriptions or purchases or whatever, his history will travel with him when he changes phones in the Android ecosystem. So that kind of flexibility, I didn't have an answer to that. I mean, I know it's not possible, but I didn't know how to kind of explain the scenarios around it. So those kind of questions need to be answered. Also, what has happened is because of the market, a lot of top OEMs in the market, especially in the Indian market, are from China, and for so many reasons, including a lot of very unfortunate racist reasons, there hasn't been much trust in OEM app stores from these while their phones keep getting sold a lot, but people do not want to share data or share payment information with Chinese companies. So while a person would happily use an Oppo phone, he would not use their store to download an app. I think Xiaomi is getting a little clear out because obviously they are the number one company in India. So obviously they are selling a lot of phones. People have trust in their products, but increasingly you'll keep hearing somebody or the other ranting about some data leaks, some data upload to China. Even the geekier ones would trace server maps and say, "Oh, this data is going to China, so I don't want to." So there has been a little hesitation on part of consumers to acquire apps or engage with the app stores on third OEM stores. On these phones, and
Okay.
unfortunately, or as in the practical reality is that those are the phones sold in India. There are no non-Chinese phones except for Samsung, which is Korean. So these kind of hesitation, these kind of questions and uncertainties need to be resolved first before a marketing push would make change. While Indus is, of course, a third-party non-OEM store, uh, for OEMs, it becomes even more harder to convince customers because I mean, like I said, one, this whole Chinese thing, the uncertainties around it, and second, it looks like because they design it in some manner, there are too many notifications, there are too many annoyances. So people consciously try to ignore it. They kind
Mm.
of tune it out. Geekier people would just turn down notifications and turn it off, but other people just tune it off and always dismiss those notifications. Unfortunately, those are not very designed very well to kind of build that trust and faith in the product. So all these
Okay.
problems need to be resolved before we can kind of look at it as a marketing challenge.
All right. I think that makes a lot of sense because, yes, trust factor is something that, Akash has also mentioned that we need to work on consciously. And while you mentioned the Chinese OEMs and Samsung, but you're right. I mean, even for I don't know what to call Indus Abazzar outside of Galaxy Store because it's undefined as of yet. So it creates a lot of opportunity and anxiety at the same time. Like, where are we going? Like, as a software solution provider, what sort of future awaits? Because, first party is the ones owned by Apple, Google. Third party are the OEM ones. So the entire undefined area is, like I said, anxiety was inducing but also exciting at the same time. With this, I think I want to come back to you, Rohit, as well. Like, you saw the packaging that Mr. Pandey had for transporting the phone. Now, in the same manner, there are a lot of regional sensibilities. A lot of times when people even when people ask you why in this episode, I'm like, because when you go to certain this thing languages, what you are seeing is unique to you, your region, your sensibilities, your it drives more meaning because literally I've started reading Marathi again, and I started with not something complicated, with something as simple as champak, because it just makes a lot of fun, and that's my regional content that I much rather consume. So in the same manner, can you just walk us through, because I have been working with you all, I know a few things. Can you just take us through the meaningfulness that those installs bring through in when they are acquired through Indus App Bazaar is something that again Anand has told, talked about before, but it just is a point that I love speaking of over and over again.
Absolutely. Sure. I think Aditya, this is a very, very important point. And I think I kind of sort of agree with what Abhishek mentioned that a lot of the other products that we have in the ecosystem as a sister competition are not very well defined for the end user, right? It's not that we really need a player to basically come in and say that, okay, this is a very big market, there should be more players. No, that's not what we are saying. We are saying that because this is a very big market, there are so many developers, there are so many end users, there is a solution design that needs to be really carved out for every combination. And that is what we are in the business of doing, right? And Aditya, when you ask the question where are we headed, the direction is exactly that as we grow further from where we are, where again we are a part of an ecosystem, even within that ecosystem and as we continue to grow, we need to basically solve for these meaningful interactions of the developer and the end consumer, right? So some of the things which we have been able to do in the past, and the reason we have been able to do so far with whatever success we have done, is because we put user at the center of everything that we create, right? For example, right at the beginning in 2015, when I did join forces with Akash, Rakesh, and Sudhir to build the App Store experience and to build the OS experience, we realized that, okay, let's say if we are at that point in time, we were building more for the next billion user audience. We did realize that people are not going to have an email ID. They are not going to have a mobile number to sign up for. They don't even understand what a sign up means. They just want to, they just want a turnkey solution, right? मैंने phone खरीदा, मेरे को दो. And it is as simple as that, as a conversation, right? So while we are all from elite colleges, we went to fancy business schools, we need to understand, step into, come out of our shoes, get into the shoes of the target audience and try to be able to think from their perspective. And for them, the solution is keep it simple, make the product experience not feel that we are dumb, we do not know the particular language, make it as simple as that for us. And that's the core reason of what we have been able to do. And we keep that consistent philosophy even when we are building products for the evolved user group, right? Because it's about being able to think from the consumer's perspective. Why would you build something which will annoy a consumer, right? Just because you, that's not at the heart of it, right? But we have consciously kept user delight as the focus. Like for example, we power our store in 13 different languages, right? We do not shy away from putting efforts to even onboard developers, the ones who are new or basically the ones who are existing with our platform, to get them, to encourage them ki, yaar, even if you, for example, don't find this immediately attractive, publish it in this content. Because we know for a fact that the end user, even if there is one or two or five end users who will like this, for us it's an effort, because we've been able to kind of sort of put in machine learning models. So for us it's a very incremental effort, but the developer giving that value to the end consumer is very, very important. And over a period of time, what we can also see from our overall, that we have a significant amount of exclusive users who are only choosing Indus as a platform to download apps, for download as our apps, right? So the exclusivity of end users being choosing our platform over any other platform which does exist on the phone, it gives us a strong amount of validation that yes, we've been able to create something which the users like, and they are now choosing us over other platforms, right? And that is exactly when the success is how should be defined for any app store who's coming and competing. It's obviously the experience part, the trust part needs to be built. There is absolutely no doubt about that, right? But the best product in the market will win. Unfortunately, what is happening is that the way originally OEMs conceived their app stores, right? They basically wanted to do utility management of their applications, right? So it kind of sort of again is compartmentalized. Here, utility management karna hai. Discovery, user sensibility wali aspect jo hai, is something which the ecosystem will evolve. And because Google is not doing that, or let's say Apple is not doing that, other players in the business are also not trying to innovate on that space, because they are keeping it restrictive for a reason, for their own. Where we come in is basically we're trying to disrupt that entire thought philosophy, saying, "Yeah, App Store aisa nahi hona chahiye. It should be a discovery product. It should be a product where the end user should be able to consume information, to know what application is doing, to consume content in the way they feel comfortable, rather than how anyone else has imagined one size fit all strategy. So these are some of the things where we feel we are definitely headed towards, and we will be able to.
I mean, I don't want to give out spoilers because I'm not that guy, but yeah, we are going to make some excellent announcements in the upcoming month. So do like the blog that I sent you. Just ensure that you subscribe to the blog because we will be sharing more news on what is coming in the next phase. I mean, I don't want to give it up, but go check out the Galaxy store right now, and then you can check it out next month, and you'll see a world of difference over there. Now, over here, this question is to both of you before we move on to the last topic at hand. If not Play Store, do you use any other store? Like, I personally will tell you that I use a lot of stores because it's something that I enjoy doing. It might be on Windows, it might be on my Linux, it might be on my Mac OS, iOS, Android, all of the operating systems. I have a lot of this thing. Personally, Indus App Bazaar is there that I like. I like APK Pure because APK Pure is just something that is different, and it is trying community but feeling at it because there is no participation. And I like Aptoid because Aptoid is something that is there on the phone and also there on the TV. Any preferences that you two have beyond in this app bazaar that you have seen and went, hey, I like how these guys are doing this? Any, Abhishek, for you, have you ever tried any of these? Sorry.
Sorry, I was on mute. Not the first time I've said that in the pandemic. So I've used all of those that you mentioned, but we are a geeky minority. If you raise that question to anybody else, I mean, do they have a choice? That's a problem we face. I do not have a choice of app stores. It's defined by the operating system I use and the OEM I choose to buy the phone off. So that limiting factor is how most people would be even able to be try any kind of app stores. So we of course use multiple devices and of course have the option of APK Pure and others. But that's the essential problem. I mean, this is the question that I should have said in the first minute of the conversation, because that is what we discuss all through. But that problem is why we need more democratization in distribution of apps. I don't have a favorite. Of course, I use Play Store. I use APK Pure. Aptoid, you said Aptoid. In fact, I discovered only on televisions. I've never used it on mobile, but before smart Android-based smart TVs were ubiquitous in India. Many were selling with Aptoid, and that is the time I kind of explore Aptoid. But these are, of course, minority platforms. I've used Indus only when I've used a Samsung phone, so that's the limiting
So
factor.
the reason
How
I
you use.
ask, sorry, the reason I ask this is because this is no more going to be limited to mobile OSs. We are going to see this come onto your TVs. We are going to see this come onto our PlayStations, our Xboxes, our. I mean, I have a lot of devices. Desktop पे भी आ जाएगा. So Rohit, up onto you. Do you
Absolutely.
have any?
Yeah, absolutely. So Aditya, I think I have used all of the ones that you have mentioned across Vivo, Xiaomi, Aptoid. I've been in this business for the past 5 years. So definitely one thing which I really liked about was using the Fire Stick device, the Amazon App Store for Smart TV. I think that's one of my favorite products that has been released. I honestly, even till 2017-18, did not feel smart TVs is something which people will be using. But the because I had a Chromecast before, for whatever reasons it was manufactured for a different country or whatever, it was very cumbersome. I did not like how it was. So I had a very bad experience with using a smart TV as a utility product. My original TV was not smart. Connecting to the Chromecast didn't make it very good. So I had a huge amount of apprehension before I moved on to the Fire Stick. But I think that's one of the most beautiful products that I've come across, especially on an and I have Apple smartwatch and everything else, but I feel that's really a gold standard. And even beyond that, what I like is our new Indus App Bazaar product experience that we are going to launch. So I think
You
that
had to plug that in.
I can't. It's like a 5 year baby for me. So yeah.
I'm glad that you did.
Yes. So
High fives all
that's
around.
probably number one, but it's because it's yet to launch. Then that's the reason.
Then that's going to be number one. I get that. Okay, cool.
I actually
Abhishek?
like the Amazon App Store. I didn't mention it initially because I was thinking from mobile point, and I had a Fire tablet many years ago, and it was a bad device, but also the App Store at that time was very restricted. Most of the apps and services were US based only, so I did not enjoy it in its full glory. But I didn't realize that Fire TV. Of course, I have 2 out of 3 TVs in my home are on Fire TV. It's such a delight. It's seamless. It's simple. It's obviously a cheap device, so that's the goodness of device and the App Store bundled. I
You
guess
are the
there's
product over
this.
there.
Yeah, they've just solved the problem, and now I see a lot of ads on it, so I'm sure it's doing pretty good for them also.
Yeah.
That's what I'm excited about because 10 years ago in 2011, I was peddling iPad 2 के ऊपर apps. Today, apps are infiltrating everything. And I always say this to anyone who says it all started with a fart. Like someone wanted someone to listen to farts in 10 different voices. And that is the first app that came on to Cydia. But over here, I'm going to end it with a very controversial thing, and this is something that we will be speaking about in the weeks to come, and hopefully Anand will give you more details in the weeks to come. But let me take it to you, Abhishek, first. Android has said that APK is no more going to be the extension that we have been like very famously. There is this article on Extreme Tech, which I'm just going to share it for 1 second. And it just went back to it because of something I read today. Is Android the most closed open source project? I mean, Roy Walters has outdone himself with this headline. Now, over here, I wanted to ask you is that APK is no more going to be the gold standard. There's something new coming. I am not very sure on what it is, but
Bundles.
app bundles. So, app bundles basically changes the way we have been doing business for the longest time. Anxiety worth, anxiety worthy for other players. What do you think? What is your perspective on what is Google doing over here?
See, Google's doing great. It works for them. If I was a product manager at Google, I'd be very happy with this solution. So it's doing what it's in their best interest. It solves the problem, makes apps a little more modular. So easy downloads, easy uploads, which improves the Play Store experience of the users. So people would like Play Store even more. So good job done by Google. What it does is it disrupts the ecosystem for others. Uh, makes it more tough for app developers to kind of publish their apps, cross publish their apps on other stores. So it makes that job, and I'm sure Rohit would be better suited to answer the technicalities of it. But from Google's perspective, great game. But any change like that brings a lot of uncertainty. But that said, I also don't blame Google for it. I mean, they are the majority app distribution platform. They are the one half of a duopoly of operating systems. So they can define standards as they go along. If we would have solved the distribution problem many years ago, maybe it wouldn't have come to it. But at this moment, I mean, they call the shots in the world.
I mean, I have to reluctantly agree. Rohit, I mean, is it a good thing, bad thing, or should we just shut it down and be like done?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is something which was launched a few years back, and as we basically saw the ecosystem evolve, one of the fun. Let's talk about what this exactly is, because I don't know if a lot of our speaker listeners would be knowing that. So basically, whenever the entire applications that we are actually downloading on our file on our phones is something in the APK format, right? Now that is some which is a standard format that has existed since applications were created first in the history like 10-15 years back. But what happens is that it's basically in the programming there are multiple files of what it is, and then everything gets consolidated. It basically bundles into one uh, XYZ element, and then it basically goes into your market. It's like if you have a room, there's furniture, there's a laptop, there's television, there's a TV, there's etc. etc. Lots of things are there on the device, but everything is one single room, right? That you basically consist. So imagine that as an analogy. What Google says is कि यार what we do is in that process you have a lot of things that you don't use in your room. Like for example, if I walk into a hotel room, There's a huge amount of things that, let's say, I would probably use just one towel if I'm single. If I have a partner, we will probably use two. A comb, etc., etc. For someone who wants to use a bathrobe, for a shoes, you don't basically have to use everything that is there. But at the end of it, you have to pay for everything. So what you're just they're saying that imagine that you have to create everything. You have to basically pay for everything, and your smartphone doesn't have a lot of memory. The size that actually gets consumed on your smartphone is for everything. So एक काम करते हैं, let's declutter it. You only pick what you want, and you pay for it. So in terms of the memory size, right? So that's very innovative. That's very logical in a thought process way. But where it's restrictive is that basically at the time this entire combination is being arranged somewhere, right? That combination was basically at the developer's end, where the developer was basically arranging this entire thing, signing it, making it secure, and then shipping it to Google, and then saying कि चलो आप इसको भेज दो. But what they are now saying is you gave all the raw material to us, and we will sign it at our end, and then we will basically ship it to the user's device based on what they really want. What it kinds of sort of does is basically limits other people to basically be able to do that same thing, right? That's where the catch situation comes in. So on a surface level, if I just look at it from someone who's sitting at an end user perspective, if I have a device, it's making sense for me. I don't have to download 100 MB APK. I don't have to download whatever is irrelevant for my device. I'm getting it at 80 MB, so I'm happy. But for other people who are in the app store business, it's kind of sort of something which is a pain point. Because then we have to again solve for that complexity. Fortunately, we have been able to do that, and we support both forms of publishing, both APK as well as Android app bundles. But it is definitely something which basically adds as a when we do a SWOT analysis, strength, opportunity, weakness, threat. So it kind of sort of acts as a barrier to entry and makes the barrier even higher than what it already is.
What you're basically saying is that since the team has been at it for the very long time, you are able to do something. And Abhishek has been very clear with this point कि यार पहले कुछ कर देते, then Google would not have been able to set the standards. But we are at a level where the billions and billions. कितना लोग होगा who are using Android? Any guesses? I mean, let's just see if anyone is listening. How many users of Android must there be? 1 billion? 2 billion? 1 billion
Greater
at least, right?
Greater than billion, of course.
I mean, let me just Google how
We
many
crossed that mark a while back.
Android users are there.
It should be about 3 billion. I guess we crossed 2.5 billion a while back.
I think we have an answer from Akash. It's around 3 billion. Yep. That's
So Akash would obviously
yeah.
half of the world's population, roughly.
Yeah, that's half of the world's population. So what we are looking at over here is half of the world's population's likes and dislikes. I mean, it's unfathomable that something like this can happen in the IRL, in the real world. That that if the standards are being set, and everyone is like, oh, this is how business is done. I mean,
yeah,
it seems odd, but I guess this is where we are at right now, and I think that is where we would. I mean, yeah. Even Pratibha is telling us,
especially with a platform which is definitely open source. I think we are moving probably the right direction. There is a lot of conversation happening there, and we definitely, as a platform, feel that competition is something which definitely brings innovation. And I think with that, we will definitely see a lot more openness, especially with the new announcements that are coming up and how the future of the entire distribution is shaping up. So we consider it as something which definitely is in the user's benefit. It's just something which we need to solve for additionally on top of the current challenges that we have. But it definitely is something which helps the end user, helps the developer. So it is a win-win situation. But again, app stores need to do one more thing in order to get it done, is the kind of thing that it is.
So, good thing, bad thing, time will tell. What is the end thought process that you want to leave the listeners and viewers with? Good thing, bad thing, कि देखा जाएगा. This is for both of you. This is not just for Rohit.
and if it was only for Rohit, you'll put him in spot. But I'll go on. Anything which is good for consumers is good in the long run. And I'll give an analogy of Apple killing Flash. Huge problem for developers. apps. There were sites which were based, apps, games, services based on Flash. Apple deciding to kill it. Apple was in a position where it could take a decision like that. Here, Google is in a position where it could take a decision like that. Developers weren't happy with that. Because businesses, there were so many agencies creating Flash apps, Flash games, and everything went
Yeah,
out
yeah,
of
yeah.
business in a midnight. Same here, developers have to do their hard work, but in the end, both will benefit consumers. So that developer effort is often unfair. Maybe the capitalist organization is using its monopolistic sleight of hand, taking that decision. But anything which makes the consumers happy in the long run should be kind of appreciated and taken care of. What the motivation of it, I'm not sure, because it's hard to kind of be empathetic towards big tech. But my vote is for people, and so if in the end
If
the
it helps
net winner
people,
is
why not?
it helps people, why not?
Okay.
Absolutely. No, I think I very much agree with Abhishek that at the end of the day, the solution, the thought process behind the solution is good. It makes things simpler and easier for you. It doesn't overload your device for what it's not needed. I think even a lot of my team members in the community were excited about it. It's just that for product managers, for distribution, and for who are looking at overall scale as a business, it's something, one additional thing that we need to solve for. And we definitely are working in a competitive space, right? The competition, if it's extremely large, will define the rules, and then you need to basically play by it and then try to beat them at it, right? So it is something which is a reality of how businesses work, right? And that's the spirit of which we also operate in. And
Okay.
in my opinion, at the end of the day, if we are able to solve that problem in an innovative way, and the users are getting benefit out of it, why not?
I think with that, thank you, Rohit. I think that gives us a lot of questions in Q&A. Yeah, what are the challenges of OEM app stores? What makes users pick Play Store over an OEM app store? I mean, let's not keep it that wide. If we were to just give the main KSPs, for me, the main KSPs are the US experience is great. One tap install is one of my favorite features. Uh, that's my favorite feature. I think that's what differentiates it for me. Okay, whenever I go, I see something new. I tap it once on the home screen. It just downloads. I don't have to go and know their aunt and their uncles and their relatives. I don't want to know. I just want to download. So for me, that's the reason I prefer Indus App Bazaar and other OEM stores over Play Store. But I think I'll take it to Abhishek and Rohit. I mean, why do you prefer? And sorry, Abhishek.
Abhishek, you're on mute again. This is
I'm sorry. I was
Uh,
actually reading Akash's comment. Rohit, if you can quickly just say it aloud so for everyone.
yeah, I'll just read it out. There are security concerns as well with AAB. Google is asking developers to share their private key with Google. Most don't mind sharing it with Google, but that's giving more power to the said company. So I think that's more of a statement than a question. And thank you for that. I mean, we will discuss all of this with, I think Google 12 and AABs and APKs is something that we are planning to discuss in the August webinar when before Android 12 launches. Hopefully, we will have
Yeah.
Anand to be discussing and giving us more details, or maybe Akash. We'll decide on that. But this is something that we will be coming back to
and for
in
all
the
our
next two
listeners,
months.
just to what Akash is trying to explain. So the room analogy that I was giving to you. So Google says that the key to the room and what is going to be taken out and what is going to be taken in is still with me. So the
Right.
developer doesn't even have the key anymore. It's still with Google, and that is something which we feel is a little kind of sort of something to think about while we have done this entire thing.
I mean, you don't want anyone to look into your house. I mean, at least I don't. वो जो कोई भी हो. I
But
mean,
that's what the current solution design is. But yeah, let's move on to the next.
Yeah.
so
So,
yeah.
why people pick Play Store is essentially just about familiarity. They bought a phone with an operating system that's developed by Google, so they'll get apps from from a app store designed by Google. I mean, it's just a logical conclusion in their head, and also the familiarity of it. It's right there. You don't have to seek for it. Uh, there's no specific reasons. People haven't experienced many app stores to kind of compare and get their favorite one. It's like only one mall in a small town, the first mall that opened. So all the youngsters would go to the same mall because you don't have an option.
Another
I
reason
mean,
to
sorry, go on,
add on to
Abhishek.
that, when it comes to also the mall, right? Having one mall is fine, but if that mall just has big bazaar and no shopping brands, that's also a problem, right? The problem with the OEM stores, at least with the Samsung specific store that I'm talking about, and I think the Samsung team was glad enough to basically accept as a problem and join hands with us to solve that, was the fact that availability of applications, right? Because back in 2018, when we joined forces with Samsung as an app store, their number one application was Airtel Thanks, which is an operator app. Like did not have the apps, right? So if you do not have anything in your mall, and even if you have a second mall, but it just has one shop, it's not relevant to you. So what we bring onto the platform or we bring as a value is the entire developer community that comes into it, because that's extremely important. The user experience, design, discovery is something which comes next, but having the apps is one of the key things that we definitely play a huge amount of strength in. So that's probably something that the OEM stores have been missing, and we then come in and try to solve that problem for them.
Okay, I think we will still put out a blog on, or we'll try to on, what is the key features of Indus App Bazaar compared to other stores, and maybe to a entire product discussion around it sometime soon. But over here, Akash has dropped the link. Whoever wants to read more on the pros and cons of replacement of APK, you can see that in the chat over there. Now we have one more question, which is from Pratibha. And Pratibha, we will answer that, but not right now because we will need to go and look for the specifics of it. But I will just still take this to Rohit. If you have macro data, what percent of the user base of Indus OS is in vernacular languages versus English? She wants to understand, how much of the percentage of people prefer using, Indus or local languages apps or use it in local languages over English.
Absolutely. So I cannot answer the specific number, but it's a significant number. We are actually seeing a huge amount of growth in that number also. It has basically two elements to it. So there were two versions of how we basically solve the regional language problem, right? So there was a version when we had the Indus OS, the operating system which was on the smartphone, and now what we have is the Indus App Bazaar, which powers on Galaxy Store and the Samsung App Store. So in the Indus OS ecosystem, the phone design or the language design was created in a way that users intuitively were said, "Yaar, what phone do you want to use your language in?" Where pretty much everybody or 95% said English. But then when they asked you what is the language which is the secondary language where you're comfortable, what is your mother tongue, over 50% of the users actually chose their mother tongue to consume content. So that's the kind of hardwired. Like if someone doesn't understand English, but they still are being asked कि आपको phone कौन से language में चलाना है, they'll say English. But if they'll ask you कि यार what is the language in which you're comfortable speaking and consuming content, then they'll choose a different language. So even it's a user experience design that needs to be created in a way that people understand. They are apprehensive about saying yeah, there's a social stigma of using your phone in a local language, but they want to do it, right? So that's basically how we are being able to solve the problem, that it's not something which comes with a stigma or a judgment, but we are saying that it's okay to have it in your language. You prefer to consume it, that is what we want to know, and therefore we use that intelligence to even serve content in that particular language.
I mean,
Also, some believe that it is a lesser experience if you switch to a regional language. While the phone was essentially designed for English, and you switch to a regional language, so maybe your experience is limited in any manner.
Yeah. And in fact, in base Android, it's a 4 or 5 step journey to change it. For us, it was just one tap. Like the way you toggle it, you just toggle it one language, you toggle it back, it's another language. So why people don't want to change it is because they feel कि यार वो 5 screen में मैं चला तो गया, change कर दिया. In my regional language, in whatever XYZ language, वहां तक मैं कैसे जाऊंगा?
Right.
so if you, like Abhishek said, if you don't know what's outside in the world, why will you want to try something new? But over here, I'll take because we are already 15 minutes over time. Let me just take the next question. And it's a very interesting, I think I finally understand this question. Are app stores really essential? I mean, My answer to that is yes. One, because I want somewhere, like for example, when I want to download another app store, ideally I should be on Indus App Bazaar, look for Google Play Store and download Google Play Store for Indus App Bazaar. Or if I want AppToad, I should be just able to download it from a secure, trusted source. And the importance of that is something that I cannot explain, because it's as simple as, we wanting to go to a store and knowing कि यार ये भैया हमारा ख्याल रखेगा. Like he has done his due diligence, and all we have to do is pay for them. For a long time, the developer ecosystem thrived on Windows with devs owning the distribution of apps. What changed? Netscape moment happened for Windows. That's my explanation. Because when Windows tried to do their own thing, then you can disagree, but I'm giving my perspective on this. So when Windows came about, and 95 to be precise, we had something called Netscape. A lot of you might know it, might not know it. At that moment where proprietary tech was enforced, there was a big case where Netscape lost most of its users. But what came out of it was that you cannot force proprietary tech on your users by default. That's what changed. Essentially, how apps were distributed.
No, no. Why I was disagreeing was because his question was, like on Windows, where third-party developers can own their distribution. Like an
Yeah.
Adobe can have their Creative Cloud
Ah,
tool
see,
to
I went the other
directly
way.
interact with the customers. That is what I was disagreeing on.
I am more of a ahoy matey sort of a person, right?
No, so his
So,
point was like on Windows, you can just download from a website and install an app. And in case of bigger publishers like in Adobe, you can control the entire subscription and development. Of course, a lot of that changes with Android with Windows 11, but that's the flexibility. And I'm all up for that kind of environment. But like I said right at the start of the conversation, I also like Play Stores. The sanctity of uh, the apps that and security, their updates, and all managed by a vendor that I trust is a good thing to have. The problem has been that for apps that don't want to go that path, and we are now amidst legal battle between Epic for Fortnite and Spotify and all banding together against the App Store economy. Uh, the reason has been because the platforms do not allow the similar experience if you don't want to choose that distribution path. So while Play Store is there on the Android phone and anybody is free to get apps from there, I should have a clear and a confident way to get apps otherwise as also, and that's something I totally back. Not just because Windows does it, because that just makes sense. If I'm a company and I'm not friendly with Google, why is it that my distribution on Android would be restricted? Uh,
Absolutely.
Something
If
like
you
that
order
changes.
anything from Amazon or Meesho or Limeroad or Jabong, you'll pretty much get a t-shirt, right? How, when it gets delivered, what prices do you get, what fabric do you get is going to be different based on a different platform. But you can order wherever you want to order it from, right? It's not like you
Including from the product's own website or their retail store physically. Even in the recent legal battles between all these companies banding together and fighting a lawsuit against Google and Apple, the problem has been that the platform kind of uh, Apple, of course, does not even allow that, but Google inside loading kind of wants you that this is unknown, so this is not secure. They're saying that Android 12 changes it, the updates are more seamless, but that kind of barrier to a seamless experience is pretty much a underhand tactic to get people not to download apps in that manner. We, of course, are geeks and we just ignore that warning and move ahead and go around. But for a lot of people, that warning, and which is why there is a warning. For a lot of people, that warning is a barrier. Okay, there is a warning, something might go bad. Let me not download this app. But of course, you have to have that kind of channel where app manufacturers, developers, big publishers can maintain their own app economy on the platform of their choice, like they do with Windows. So I'm totally for this thing. I hope that Android 12 changes that, like it has been shared in the previews and all that. But let's see how fair that is and how seamless that is as we go along.
so to your first question, app stores are essential. The question answer is yes.
Not essential. I mean,
Or
Yeah, good to have. I mean, for a lot of app developers, they are essential. So the discovery and the opportunity, because Adobe, I know, so I will go to adobe.com and download their software. But if I was abhishek.com offering a product, nobody would come to my site if I was a small developer. That discovery happens on stores. So stores, which is why the app economy is so big, because the stores built it. Let's not take the credit away from the app stores.
I mean, we don't want to, but Abhishek, Rohit,
No,
are
no.
app stores essential? Let's
Yes,
answer that
it's
first.
as essential as water for human
he
body.
he builds one for a living, so obviously
It,
he can't.
it's as essential as water, right? If you want to have a smartphone, it's water for you. Because see, imagine a smartphone without any applications or without any kind of a access to information. What is it for you? It is just a calling.
Correct.
Right? It's as important because see, it's not the fact that the
Just hold on. You call people on your phone? I mean, how
yeah,
old are you? Sorry, but
but
go on.
but yeah, absolutely. I mean, uh, the the smartphone's essence is being there's two utilities, right? What do you do with the smartphone? Like broadly categorize it. Yeah, you either improve your life, payments, social media. You basically are learning a music skill. You're watching something to cook. You're improving a life skill, or you're basically getting entertainment. You're watching something, consuming content passively. That two primary major use cases which broadly gets covered in these
Hmm.
app stores. What help you do is basically get you the right application or get you the right service which does it in the best possible manner, in a secure way, in a way that is right for you as an end user, right? Security, as Aditya has already covered, is very important, right? If you basically are going to go on a web on your browser, and you might end up from one link to the other link to thousands of other links. Those things are happening less now, but it's still happening, and it's not a very safe way to basically manage content in an application. So the app stores is extremely important from that perspective, and also for developers, right? It's a community, and it's the advancement that has become in the entire marketing as well as the distribution space. It's literally as simple as water. So there has to be a store or a multiple stores which basically are getting things done, but an absence of it is something which we cannot imagine.
And what do you think about the other part of the question? Developer ecosystem. Like it was what changed? Like in the distribution. Do you have any comments on that? Like what has changed in the distribution of applications?
See, one thing which I sort of would want is that for developers, it should not be कि यार आपको अलग-अलग app store के लिए अलग-अलग incremental development करना पड़ रहा है, because that's just too cumbersome for them. If there are like let's say 10 app stores and everybody has their own technology stack that needs to be created. I'm not talking about the core platform which is Android. I'm saying that even within Android, if there are even few nuts and bolts that they have to change in order to get things distributed, it's kind of sort of not very friendly for them. Like for example, Nike will sell on Amazon or will sell on Jabom. It will sell the exact same shoe. It doesn't have to change the assembly line to basically produce different shoes for different stores. So from that perspective, even if there are multiple app stores, the discovery element, the trust element, the distribution element, those things can be different, but the core of the technology should not change. If that is changing very widely, then it's very difficult for developers to basically scale, because
So, if what I'm understanding correctly is no to fragmentation, yes to more options. Like let's
absolutely,
not fragment everything into different things, but let's have more options. I mean, I
absolutely.
agree with that. And with I think again, I'm really sorry for shooting over time, but we have a last question, and this is something that this is for Gopinath, who's been an active community member for a very long time, and he's asking ki, what could be done to get people using Play Store to try other app stores? Is there a pain point which is in focus for solving in Indus OS? I mean, I would like to give it to Rohit first, but over here, what I would tell you is again, my pain point is simple. I like to try new applications. It's not a pain point, it's more of a user sensibility. So for me to go and try new apps, I just want to be able to get new discoverable content and applications on a regular basis. So that is something that I was hopeful that with Cydia, for example, on iOS is just it's just a plethora of things. It's like the Pandora's box is always open on Cydia, and I find nothing wrong in using Cydia because I've been using it since the day that I bought my first iPhone or got my first iPhone. So, and with the same thing I miss on Android, because a lot of times the discoverability is what matters the most to people, and sensibilities, like मेरे को नहीं देखने का ये. I mean, with the new format, iOS really tried to get me to try to tell me a story, but I don't want to hear your story. I mean, don't give me more text. I want to just go in, try or see visually and move on. So that is something that is something that I would look forward to in a Play Store, and I really have to give it to Apple for trying. But no, I mean, I don't want to go in and have it another, like it goes in like this and it becomes another thing which I have to scroll up. It's just a very cumbersome experience. So for me, it is something light and more enjoyable, which just is fun,
Yep.
right? I miss fun. Like I miss fun while discovering applications. So for me, that would be something important. Rohit?
Sure. I think one of the very obvious points that I've already mentioned is that the ones that we solve for currently, Play Store has a very complicated way of signing up. You have to have an email ID. You have to belong to a certain ecosystem. You have to basically be comfortable consuming language in English. These are some of the biggest pain points which we see for the next 500 to billion users which are there, right? Which is what we are solving through no sign in. Content available in 13 languages. So these are some of the things which you're already solving for today. But what I also see as a problem, as a pain point, is that in Play Store, there's not a lot of personalization that is happening for you. Like for example, all of us will pretty much see it in the same format. There's no control that you feel as an end user. Like I should be able to generate app recommendations on my own. I should get what I really want rather than what a curation led discovery should be. As well as the third element, which is basically information. Like gone are those days when people are going to read long descriptions, are going to read about what an app does and then make a decision if you want to install them. You have to give the information right away, right? The entire webinar, let's say for example, was happening with all the three of our videos off, we wouldn't have understood a thing. We would have just been a very very passive audience, right? So interaction, let the developer communicate directly with the end user. As a merchant or as a platform, you don't really need to hold back the developers, let the innovation flow, right? So innovation of how content discovery is happening is also something app stores, I don't think, are doing in the right way. So it's just the imagination of how an app store should look like is now the pain point in itself, and that is what we're trying to solve, and we will very very soon hopefully solve it as a new release comes in next month. So yeah, look forward to seeing you use that
I
and get.
mean, we will share it with you. If you want to try it out before the world gets it, you are there in our WhatsApp group. Just drop us a message. Abhishek, what's your take?
This is the third time, Abhishek.
Mute पे हो तुम?
I'm sorry. I thought you had a chuckle at my answer, and
No,
then
no,
so
no,
I
no, no,
continued
no.
speaking.
No, no,
Sorry
no.
about
Sorry.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I said Rohit answered that already. He was best suited for it. So
Cool.
I don't think I need to add anything.
Okay. So I think that brings us to the end of this webinar. But I would be, absolute levels of barriers are put to app stores. What is the data instrumental strategy from? You know what, Gopi? Gopinath, I think you're giving us a lot of ideas for. Uh, okay, let me just try it out. Is the data from apps accessible to app stores? Rohit, yes, no.
Let me just read it quickly. Is the data from access what the lower where no, so Gopinath, if I'm understanding correctly, are you asking if we as an app store understands how many daily active users Twitter or whatever number of click engagement is happening inside Twitter, Zomato? The answer is no. The application belongs to the app developer. Whatever analytics that they have inside of the usage of the application is completely their own. We get to know how many people downloaded their application and all those basic stuffs which are applicable for an app store. But whatever information and analytics that the app developer has at its own product, it belongs to them. We don't uh, participate in that exercise, and neither does any other app store. So it's just like we
Uh,
are a merchant who's distributing the store rather than understanding what is happening inside the store or what is happening inside the
so
application itself.
if he was a paint seller, he would know how many cans of red were sold and yellow were sold, but how the can of red paint was used and for what wall, they will not know. And does it track user engagement at App Store level or app level? I think they track it at App Store level, but since they do not have any personalized, I personally identifiable data, it just categorizes you as, I think, what does they categorize you? What do you categorize users as? Like you call me a social butterfly or something,
Yeah.
and
So
yeah.
we categorize basis on persona. So just to answer that, Gopinath, if you are distributing an application with Indus App Bazaar, you will have a developer console uh, through which you will be able to upload your information, see what information is live on the platform, what is the status of that information. You will also get a lot of data analytics about how the category of the application in which you doing, how your app is performing in terms of downloads, in terms of engagement. So these are some of the insights as an app store, because your app is hosted on our platform. How is your particular application doing and faring on our platform? You get to get that information on via our developer portal as well. It is only available to you because you are the one who owns it, and we as the platform because we are sharing it with you. And inside level analytics of what is happening deeply inside your application, that again is obviously something the developer knows themselves.
Okay, I think, thank you. I hope, Gopi, that answers your question. And like, I would like to end this with telling everyone that we are hosting, community meetups every day. In the comment section over here, you'll find Sahil, who's very big on Windows. I think after Abhishek, he is the second person, and I know a lot of people who use a lot of things. You are the second human being who was so bullish on Windows App Store. But Sahil is the guy you get to hang out with on Clubhouse and on Twitter Spaces with Amay. And if you want to know the schedule of where and when things are happening, you can follow Indus on any of their social platforms. And if you want, I was just going to share the upcoming topic of discussion is going to be on 5th of August, where we will be talking about app distribution, attribution frauds. Uh, then Har Gadi Badal Rahi Hai with, I think this is more casual. Twitter Spaces is more formal. Clubhouse is where, it's more of a casual conversation that is happening. Not the best in talking in Hindi, so I'm not going to attempt what that is. Har Gadi Badal Rahi Hai. So anyway, so then we have retargeting and performance, and then we have, is your app store really trustworthy? And of course, after that, we will be having our monthly webinar where we are hoping to discuss the changes on Android 12 and what it means for the developers. Now, this is something, Nigel is the guy who you will be hearing from a lot. He will be hosting people on Clubhouse, and this blog over here has all of the references that we spoke about today. So do make sure that you check it out and share it with people whom you think will be able to benefit from that. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you Abhishek. Thank you Rohit. Thank you everyone for being here, even though we have shot half an hour over. Thank you very much for joining in. And if you have any further questions, you can email it to us at social.connect@indus.com, or you can DM us, or you can, just drop us a tweet. Thank you, everyone. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you so much, Aditya. It's been
Thanks, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.